Alright, ladies and gentlemen, like many of you have thought, we are going to be doing a Paladin and Druid multi-class for my Divine Smite Druid. Early on, when you play this class, because it is a multi-class that does require you to multi-class after level 5, do you want to play as a Paladin early on, or do you want to play as a Caster Druid early on? That choice I will leave up to you. Subclass wise for Paladin, pick whatever you want. Ancients is nice if you want to keep the nature theme. Vengeance is very powerful. These two are my go-to picks since you do gain Misty Step at level 5. And Misty Step, we all know, is just great to travel around the battlefield. Now, I do want to take a look at my ability scores here because they are going to be a little strange depending on how you play this class and what you want to do. So we know Charisma is going to be any type of like NPC chat interaction as well as your spell save DC for your Paladin type spells. While Druids use Wisdom. I do find the spells you have for Druid are going to be a little better than Paladin. So I'm putting it up to 15, and with gear we talk about later on, you'll be able to increase this. I'm getting my Dexterity all the way up to 17 and Constitution up to 16. That way early on I will have high AC, high initiative, and a good amount of HP and Constitution, meaning I survive better since I will be a melee based like Spellcaster hybrid. Your skill proficiency wise, pick whatever you wish, but because I have low charisma, I would not recommend persuasion, and depending on your character's background, you may have different choices than what I have here anyway. Now I know what you're thinking, we have high dexterity, so what about strength weapons? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit because with the way I set up this build and depending on the weapon choice that you make, you can even utilize some really fun strength weapons with dexterity. So of course, as a Paladin at level 2, you do get a fighting style. We are going to be using one-handers with a shield most likely throughout most of this playthrough. So that means dueling will be a good pick. If you'd rather have higher AC, then simply go with defense to get your extra AC. I wouldn't recommend great weapon fighting here since most of our damage is going to be coming from your good old Divine Smite anyway. So with that being said, I do think dueling is the best option here. Now at level 4, you do gain your first feat. This is when you have a choice to make. If you don't want to utilize gear I talk about later on, simply go Wisdom and Dexterity and you're set. However, with specific gear later on, you could easily go something else. Instead of doing Dexterity and Wisdom, I'm going Athlete just to get Dexterity up to 18 as well, while maintaining that extra modifier and some additional perks as well. Now, Paladin level 5, we wanted to go Paladin 5, A to get extra attack, fantastic. But I really wanted to get Misty Step because Misty Step is a great spell to have that transfers to the battlefield whenever needed. Very, very useful, especially for a Paladin melee based character. Now this is when things get interesting. Paladins at level 6 do get Aura of Protection, giving you a bonus to all saving throws equal to your Charisma modifier. Well, because I went Wisdom with this build instead of Charisma, this is completely useless and I'm not utilizing it, but I did want to talk about it in case you did want to end up going the charisma based version of this build. If that's the case, then going Aura Protection may be useful for you. Instead though, this is when you need to make a choice here. Are you going to be using dex based weapons like rapiers and things like that? If so, then you are set and simply start multi-classing into Druid right away. If you want to use some strength-based weapons, especially the weapon you see on screen now, which is very useful, one thing you could do is put 1 level into Monk. And I know what you're thinking, why 1 level? Well, here's why. Because you started out as a Paladin, you have martial weapon proficiency. Monks have the ability right here called Martial Arts Dexterous Attacks. Attacks of monk weapons and your unarmed attacks scale with dexterity instead of strength if your dexterity is higher. And our dexterity is higher here. So this means any weapon type that is not a two-handed weapon only, so any versatile weapon or any one-handed weapon will scale with your dexterity instead of strength, giving you access to use pretty much any weapon you would like for this build. Now, if you plan to use dexterity-based weapons only, my choice is then to say go with War Cleric here. That way you can have the ability to gain an extra attack 3 times per long rest. That way you can attack 3 times, 3 Divine Smites in 1 round of combat. That choice will be up to you. I'm going to go ahead and go Monk here just because I do think it's fun to utilize weapons that normally don't scale with dexterity as dex based. So that's what I'm doing, and then my final 6 levels will be Druid instead. Now, once you get 2 levels into Druid, you do get to have the option to choose a subclass. We are going to be going with our subclass Circle of Spores. Initially, I wanted this build to be a Circle of the Moon build. However, what I did in D&D doesn't actually transfer over to the mechanics of Baldur's Gate 3, so we can't do that version. So instead, we're going with Circle of Spores. This is going to be nice for those who like the whole necromancy-esque theme of any type of like Oathbreaker Paladin, while you'll still have access to Raise Dead and all kinds of stuff as well. Not to mention some really fun things like Halo of Spores and Symbiotic Entity, which is going to be really, really beneficial to our build. The final feat that we are going to utilize here, realistically, is going to be ability improvement since we didn't use the Hag's Hair. If you did use the Hag's Hair, then you will have an extra feat to utilize anything that you wish, and my recommendation would be Savage Attacker to make sure your Divine Smites hit as hard as possible. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to your spells, realistically, because you have low charisma, your Paladin spells are going to be very, very weak with this build. But things like Hold Person, you might as well not even use because you're probably not going to pass a save anyway. So go with your Paladin spells based off of utility. When it comes to your Druid spells, however, Druids get a lot of different spells here. A lot of them are utility based. However, you do have access to a bunch of different things that are all going to be prepared spells, so you can change them pretty much whenever you want. I go with a mix of utility and not utility. The main non-utility spell I like using that's going to be really fun for like damage and knockback will be Thunder Wave. Everything else is pretty much utility based though. So go through all the spells here that you want and pick what you think is going to be useful for you and your party. Some things I do want to point out though on why I went Wisdom over Charisma. So your Halo of Spores that you have for being a Spore Druid, the spell save DC for this is actually going to be Wisdom based. So this will help out to make sure you pass this once per turn to do the extra necrotic damage to your enemies. So do keep that in mind. And of course, all these spells here are Wisdom based as well when it comes to any type of like spell save DC. So if you go to use like Moonbeam here and things like that, it's going to be Wisdom. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to talk gear. And the gear I'm going to talk about today, feel free to mix and match what you want. It's just my recommendation on things I think interact really well. Starting out, I think my character looks pretty dang cool. We're actually going to dye our cape. I'm using the dye you see on screen now, just to make our cape a little bit cooler looking so it matches the whole theme. Like this cool like dark purple look, I think looks pretty badass. Now let's start with the bread and butter of this build, because realistically, you only need a few pieces to make this work and you can add anything else in between. Starting out with the necklace. I am using the necklace you see on screen now because it gives me +1 wisdom, allowing you to get this 16 wisdom along with all the other stats you see on screen without the Hag's Hair, which is nice to have. The strength should be 8. I just had the potion of everlasting vigor from a previous build, which is why you see it at 10. The weapons here, the Blackguard sword in combination with the shield of the Undevout, boots of stormy clamor, Dark Justicier's gauntlets, Spore Keeper chest, and the Bone Spike helm all interact together very, very smoothly. Let's talk about the number one interaction here, fear. So the Bone Spike helmet has an ability called Menacing Attack, normally something that Battle Masters have that you can have on any class that utilizes this helmet. The whole rage thing here, don't worry about because you're not a barbarian, but what's cool is the Menacing Attack here is very strong. It does additional damage equal to your proficiency. So at level 12, that is going to be +4 here. It adds all the extra weapon bonuses you would have from gear and things like that. Main reason we use it though is to put fear on our enemies, because enemies that are feared have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls and they can't move. Well, your Shield of the Undevout not only will give you an extra level 1 spell slot, which isn't that big of a deal, but enemies have disadvantage on saving throws to resist spells or actions that inflict fear, which means your menacing attack. Now here's where it gets even cooler. The Blackguard sword has the ability to daze targets whenever you Divine Smite. So you use menacing attack, more than likely they're gonna get feared, and because of that they have disadvantage on ability checks and whatnot, and everything else in between, which is cool. And then you also have the ability to daze with your Divine Smite, so it's fun to have all this extra CC. Combine that with the Boots of Stormy Clamor, and you'll also be applying reverberation at the same time. Here is when it gets even better though, and that's when we talk about our chest piece and our gloves. So Armor of the Spore Keeper. So you get a thing called Spore Sacks here, which is nice and should have been part of the Spore Druid baseline in my opinion. But once per long rest as a bonus action, you can cast Haste Spores, Bimberbang Spores, or Tinmass Spores. Realistically, we want it for the haste spores. Being able to do AoE haste without the need of using a spell slot or any type of like concentration check in case you get hit is very powerful. But you also do additional 1 necrotic damage whenever you do necrotic damage. Well, guess what? Our weapon has 1d4 necrotic damage base. So this will do your 1d4 roll plus the extra 1 necrotic damage at all times. We have our gloves, allowing our weapon attacks to do another 1d4 necrotic damage as well, which then stacks with this as well. If you take a look at your spells for the Druid section here, Halo of Spores, this will also do the 1d6 plus the 1 necrotic afterwards as well. So that 1 necrotic damage doesn't seem like a lot, but it does stack up with the type of gear that we have. Your cloak and your rings realistically are whatever you want to utilize. It's going to be up to you. And my bow I'm simply using for the extra initiative and advantage on perception checks that it provides. If you don't want to utilize this, use whatever bow you want. Alright everybody, I did end up switching my cloak out for the Cloak of Displacement here, just to make sure I have a little bit of higher survival since I am showcasing this solo. Now one thing you can do that I think it's going to be really great because I didn't patch it yet, make sure you get your symbiotic entity up, that way you get the extra temporary hit points, you get the extra festering spores and things like that, so I can use all these different spores to attack the enemies when needed as an action, and all of these are once per long rest as you can see. Befuddle, for those who don't know, it's just a debuff. They can't control its actions and they wander around like without direction. So one thing you could do, they didn't patch your Val yet, you can use Val on yourself, which I think it's kind of hilarious. We're going to go ahead and use our haste spores to put this on ourselves, just to make sure we do end up getting haste without the need of a haste potion or anything like that in between. And then I'm going to go ahead and use Befuddle on these creatures in front of us. Can I get more than one? I can. Alright, so it is time to do combat. You can see the spore still in the ground, so make sure you're in your spore so you get the buff here. So we're going to go ahead and attack this target in front of us using our big time attack, menacing attack, because this thing does a ton of damage. So you can see just from one hit, he's frightened. I have my reverberation stacks and all that fun stuff in between. But wait, there's something I didn't do, and you're absolutely correct. You can see I did not set up any of my divine smites here, which means my attack when I went to attack him could have done even more damage, but because I didn't set up divine smite properly, I did less damage. So let's go ahead and restart this, showcasing what the maximum damage is when you set it up correctly. Alright, now that I actually have my reactions and everything set up, I opened up the same exact way as before. Let's go ahead and attack the target in front of us now, just to showcase a little bit of the extra damage you can do when set up properly. So did some good damage there. Let's go for a rank 4 here. Didn't quite kill him, which is a little unfortunate, but that's okay because we can follow up. We have a bonus action that we could use to use like an unarmed strike. He has 15 HP. This probably won't kill him, But what we could do instead is do something like Pummel Strike as a bonus action, and this should kill him. Or this would be a good scenario when you could open up and do Flurry of Blows on the enemy to kill him that way. So he's dead now, which is cool. So this means we can now use our reaction here, Fungal Infestation, and rise him as an undead. So now I have a cool little zombie to fight with me, and you can use this a ton of different times. You can have a lot of your little like fungal enemies with you, which is really fun in my opinion. So it's still my turn. I don't want to leave my haste spores here because we all know how great haste is, right? So let's let them come to us. So one thing I could do now for another action is to simply use my Bibber Bang spores here instead and use it on the enemy instead. So you have both of them already there. Let's use it on that enemy there. So Noxious Fumes, I have Reverberation on him, and Noxious Fumes, as you can read, they will take poison damage each turn. So it's a great way to kind of like set up like an AoE like field, I guess you could say, which is pretty cool. I do have my extra attack I can do now. So I do have plenty of movement, which is good. So how about we attack her and then move back to my area? So she almost died in one hit. Let's go ahead and do a rank 3 Divine Smite, and she's gone. I'm going to move back to my haste spores now. That way I stay in the haste area. If you take a look, I don't have any more reactions, but my next turn I could use a reaction to then have another zombie with me. And we'll just end it here and let them attack. Oh, he pushed my zombie. Now, one thing you could see, you see how he said he got haste spores? Your enemies can benefit from the haste spore that's on the ground, so you do want to make sure you put it in a good spot. Alright, zombie, time for you to go hit somebody. This is 30, 50, 50. We'll try hitting this guy. So I did hit him, so he now has the debuff on him, which is cool. So if I kill him on my turn, guess what? He's going to turn into a zombie, which would be really, really dang cool. So let's go ahead and make sure we hit him really hard. Another menacing attack on the enemy. Good damage. Rank 3 Divine Smite. He's gone, and now I have another zombie with me. Fantastic. For our bonus action here, how about we go ahead and add a bonus action on top of the enemy in front of us. Let's go ahead and use Hunter's Mark. That way we do even more damage. Because it's considered a debuff, it has 2 stacks of Reverberation, and then I can follow up with Lacerate or something else to attack. So did some good damage, rank 4 Divine Smite, and he's gone. Which now leaves just him and the archer left to fight. Alright, zombies, go ahead and attack this guy. Chance to hit a little low because the zombies just realistically don't have good hit chance. But it doesn't matter, he has the debuff on him, so guess what happens when I kill him? Guess what he's gonna do? You guessed it, turn into a zombie. And now I have another zombie. So now we're going to go attack this enemy right in front of us. So what should we do? We have a regular attack plus a bonus action that we can do to kill this target. We could do something like Flurry of Blows. We could walk up and attack him. And remember, I already did one attack here. So I say we get into range to attack him regardless. And and I should have enough movement to catch up to him. And I do, which is nice. So now I'm going to use my Pummel Strike. Hit him this way. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does benefit from the extra necrotic. He's dazed as well, which is nice. Reverberation, but I do get the option for Divine Smite as well to do damage that way. And then I can follow up with my extra attack earlier to finish him. And that's essentially how you play the build. You have some fun little zombies to have with you. Of course, I could have raised more zombies throughout the fight by using the fungal like infestation thing. The zombies that created from the bite debuff, you cannot control, but you can control the ones that are like all, I'm not sure how to describe it, like fungused out because they have all that fungi stuff on them. So I can run over here. Should I get any more? Yeah, let's go ahead and get more. So you can realistically have a little like mini army of undead at the same time. And what's great is I have this, but I also have the spell, if I did want it, animate dead as well. And if you did want even more undead, you could easily add some more necromancy items to this to have more of an undead theme as well. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'm Ronan, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.